Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Barbed from Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London, and in today's video a look at all of the stunning species we got in this week at Northwest London's biggest and best aquatic centre. Let's get into it. Now, before I get started, I would like to ask all of you a massive favour. For those of you who enjoy what we do here at Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London, if you enjoy the videos and shop tours and everything that we try to do with our ponds, everything that you've seen us do over the past year of making these videos, then please consider voting for us in Practical Fishkeeper's Readers Poll. The votes are open now, and I will leave a link in the description. It will be the first thing at the top of the description, and all of your support would mean the world to us. My aim is to get us in the top 40 list for independent stores this year, which we've never achieved before. And I think that we have done so many improvements in the store over the past year and try to expand our knowledge and range and communicate all these things to you guys, and it would just help us out massively. So link in the description. A vote from you would just mean the world to us. So thank you so much. But without further ado, on with the tour. So for those of you who are new here, we do things a little bit different at Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. We do everything continent by continent, just so that we can help educate people on where their fish are from in the world. And the first thing you see when you come into our store is our South American range. When you first walk in and look on your left-hand side, you have our Livebearers section. And as I showed off last week, we have some absolutely stunning panda swordtails and panda platies. And if you're interested in their care requirements and where they are from in the world, then check out last week's video, which will be linked at the end of this tour. In terms of new Livebearers this week, we've got some absolutely beautiful black snakeskin guppies. These guys have these amazing black tails with snakeskin bodies, and they'll just make an excellent addition to anyone who keeps guppies or fancy guppies as a whole. Additionally, we have these beautiful Dumbo males in, and as a whole, our Livebearers section is looking beautiful. Slightly out of the main picture, but also in this section, although they are a North American species, we still have our Elosoma evergladii or Pygmy sunfish, and they are doing extraordinarily well. The males are showing off all of these beautiful blacks and blue colors, and we're actually getting some breeding behaviors going on. So if you are interested in keeping Elosoma evergladii, then be sure to check these guys out. I've done a care kind of video a couple of videos ago, and again, I'll leave a link in the description for that if you're interested in how to keep these guys. If you have any questions on how to keep anything that I mentioned in this video and don't want to go back and look at the old videos, then just drop me a comment below and I'm more than happy to reply to you guys, teach you anything that I've learned new since putting up those videos, or anything that you guys are just curious about. I'm more than happy to discuss everything in the comments section. Now, further down in our South American range, we got a variety of different fish in this week. In terms of new Ancistrus, we got a species I had never heard of before. They are called Woodenmeister Ancistrus, which I'm probably absolutely butchering that name, but having looked at their care requirements very briefly, they're extraordinarily similar to a lot of other Pseudo-Ancistrus and Ancistrus species. These guys are absolutely stunning with some amazing looking stripes across their bodies. The Ancistrus need slightly larger tanks, at least at 20 to 30 gallon, and you'll have to supplement them with algae wafers. But these guys have settled in absolutely beautifully, and I've just been watching them explore the tank in the past few days, and I'm so happy that we have them in stock. In terms of Tetra, we have some new Neon Tetra in stock, which are obviously your bread and butter species, and we also had a restock of our Bentosi Tetra. If you've watched these videos for a while, you know I absolutely adore Bentosi Tetra, or otherwise known as Candy Tetra. They are an absolutely stunning species with these beautiful white tips, and I don't see them very often in the trade, but they are absolutely worthwhile keeping. I've kept them and bred them in my home aquariums before, and they're an extraordinarily rewarding fish to keep. When you see them having these breeding behaviors where they kind of lay on their side and shimmer at each other trying to catch the light, it's one of the most beautiful things that you can see out of a lot of Tetra species. In terms of Cory catfish, we have some beautiful stir by Corydoras in. We still have our similar Corydoras, which have stuck around for a long time now, but they are one of my favorite little species of cory cats. Additionally, we have our Inculcana Corydoras catfish and Pepper Corydoras catfish. I'm looking at getting some new species in the next few weeks, particularly things like orange and green lasers. Although they are more expensive, they are the type of fish that have been on my bucket list for such a long time. Additionally, in this section, we have our Apistogramma species, where I've been experimenting with putting a bit more planting and a bit more cover into the tanks for them. And it's been really rewarding watching the breeding pairs really show off their colors with the additional greenery, and watching those reds pop against the greens has just been absolutely beautiful. Now, the most exciting things in South America this week for me have been our restock of our red Whiptail catfish, which are a species of stick catfish or Sturosoma. Then additionally, for the first time in a really, really long time, we originally got these fish in for a friend of the store, John, of the Farlowella Royal catfish, or Royal Farlowella catfish. These catfish are slightly bigger than their Whiptail counterparts. These guys are particularly a tank bred variant of the Royal Farlowella, which is absolutely brilliant, as we don't like to encourage the wild caught trade here at Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. And Royal Farlowellas are absolutely beautiful. They have these really delicate bodies with blacks and whites and almost striking angles on them throughout. They have these almost zebra-like impressions on them. They are really quite an elegant looking fish when you look at them. In terms of requirements, you need to think about where they are from in the wild. So these are from fast flowing South American rivers, which means that they need a good amount of flow through their aquarium, meaning in terms of filtration, they probably need a canister filter, allowing you to really dial in that overall water speed. In terms of lighting, they prefer dimmer lighting. However, they do require a significant amount of planting. This species is primarily a herbivore, meaning they will feed almost entirely on algae and biofilm, which means in terms of hardscape and planting and aquascaping, you should really be thinking about getting as much driftwood and planting into their aquariums as physically possible. In terms of feeding, you should definitely think about giving them a supplementation of algae wafers. And in terms of tank mates, you need to think about non-nipping species. Things like Corydoras catfish, certain tetras, but you should avoid things like guppies, angels, anything that's going to be attracted to those long, beautiful, elegant fins. When it comes to your tank layout, as is the case with a lot of river species, they're going to prefer a shallow aquarium, meaning that the gallons and literage is spread out in a much shallower space, meaning there is much more depth and length to the aquarium as opposed to height. This is important because they need to feel comfortable when being able to move around in space. If you're thinking about breeding these guys, which I absolutely think that people should be encouraged to do, particularly with tank bred specimens anyway, you should be keeping them in at least a 30-gallon aquarium, and keep them in a group of 6 or more to make sure you get a good mixture of males and females. In terms of water parameters, obviously, tank bred species are going to be a lot more tolerant than non-tank bred species, but in terms of pH, ideally between a pH of 6 to 7.5. And then in terms of DGH, I've heard anywhere from about 4 all the way up to 15, 16. However, you need to keep your water parameters extraordinarily stable, as is the case with a lot of river species. You need to make sure your nitrates are low, your nitrates and ammonia are at 0, and you're really keeping on top of your overall water quality by performing weekly water changes. This is a non-negotiable with Royal Farlowella. They are quite delicate when it comes to big parameter swings. But if you are looking to set up a beautifully planted, large, shallow aquarium, Royal Farlowella are definitely one of those species that I would encourage anyone to keep. On the flip side of South America, in our largest species aquariums, we still have an excellent selection of different angelfish, whether you're looking for koi angels, golden marbles, blue avatars or bicolors. These guys are looking absolutely beautiful at the moment. In particular, the avatar angelfish are really catching a lot of people's eyes. We still have a couple of specimens in stock, and we'll probably be looking to get more of them because they are absolutely beautiful. We still have our dwarf polar parrotfish, which again, dwindling in numbers. However, they are tank bred here at Pond Life Aquatics, and they are extremely cute. And then one of my favorite tanks in the entire aquarium is our Discus tank, and I absolutely love these guys. We gave it a little bit of a revamp in the past week where we just refreshed a bit of the sand, and we're going to be upgrading the lighting in the coming weeks to then encourage a bit more planting in this aquarium itself. But in terms of the Discus, they just keep going from strength to strength. I think the breeding of Discus, particularly German specimens, has just improved so much. We've had zero issues with this batch of hard water Discus, and I think it is at a point, as long as you have a large enough aquarium, where Discus are now accessible to so many more people in the trade. Now, moving down into Asia, you might have seen earlier this week, I posted on the channel the first in our series of setting up our new Asian range, and you would have seen all the lights on in all their glory. However, one of the lights has started to flicker off. It's just the rocker switch has gone a bit haywire. Superfish are kindly going to send us out a replacement for that. But if you're interested in seeing how we set up this new side of the aquarium, then do check out that video. It came out on Wednesday. I'll leave a link in the description, and maybe I'll put a time card here. However, in terms of new species in this area, we got some absolutely gorgeous glass catfish in. I've talked about these previously in our stock tours, but we have had a really beautiful restock. If anyone's interested in a species spotlight for glass catfish, because they do seem to catch so many people's eyes, then do just drop me a comment below and I'll get right to work on making a species spotlight for this absolutely beautiful community tank fish. Up in this tank where we usually keep our female fighters, we've actually switched our female fighters onto the other side of our new Asia rack, and that tank is looking absolutely stunning. Female fighters have been an absolute bestseller here at Pond Life Aquatics, particularly because the females are just looking like placats at the moment. They seem to really be enjoying the new planting that I've given them. And if you're interested, again, in how I've done that planting, do check out our Asia setup video. But they've just really enjoyed having an addition of Formort and Rotala in their tanks, a bit more of a naturalistic look to the overall aquariums, and they've really settled in nicely. Additionally, we have our Denizoni Barbs, got some Clown Loach, green Kabutoi Rasbora. We still have a good selection of our Asian Rummy Nose, Honey Gourami, Sparkling Gourami, and Hillstream Loach. We still have our Zebra Danios alongside our Harlequin, but we did get an absolutely beautiful restock of our Leopard Danios as well. Danios are just an excellent addition to new aquariums, particularly for beginner aquarists. They are an extraordinarily hardy fish, and they are a temperate species, meaning they do not need a heater. So we do encourage people to keep various species of Danios throughout the year, just because we find that people have a good time with them when first setting up an aquarium. Additionally, in Asia, we still have an excellent selection of white cloud mountain minnows. We still have some Adaka rice fish and Amano shrimp. Our dwarf dragon gobies have settled in extraordinarily well. They're doing really nicely on a selection of frozen and live foods. And if you're interested in a little bit of how to keep that species, again, I talked about them in last week's video. We have a good selection of CPDs or Galaxy Rasbora alongside this beautiful tank of Pentazoa Barbs, which are living with some red Gourami. Additionally, our golden barbs have settled in really nicely. They are not nearly as skittish as when they came in, and they seem to be appreciating having a lot of cover and plant in that aquarium down there. There are two species in Asia that I would like to highlight this week and kind of discuss their care requirements and if you should be caring for them at all with this species. The first are our Asian clams, or golden beetle clams. We've got a variety of these in. Now, these are somewhat of a contentious species to keep, and you need to be extraordinarily careful when keeping them. They are not the easiest species to keep in the wild because they are a prolific filter feeder, which means that they need to have a lot of food in suspension for them to survive in aquaria. However, what makes them contentious is that they can be an extraordinarily invasive species. In Asia and Africa, even in places in Europe, they spread extraordinarily easily in freshwater systems. So if you do decide to keep this specimen, you should be very aware of when you are performing water changes that you are not dumping it down drains. Their larval stage is less than 200 microns in length, which means they can very easily spread through a sewer system. So make sure that when you are dumping water from an aquarium that have these in, you're not going near any open access waterways. Try and dump it into plant beds or anything like that. If you are tempted to try and keep this extraordinarily hard to keep in aquarium species, which is kind of dichotomous for how invasive they are, you need to make sure you have really good flow and strong filtration. And when you are feeding the tanks, you want to be supplementing with things like algae wafer, spirulina flake that has been mixed into water into powdered form and fed regularly throughout the day. Without this, they will not have enough food inside of the actual water column itself, and they will very slowly starve in your aquarium. However, if you do have a lot of food in suspension, if you already have other filter feeders in your aquarium itself, this invert can be very interesting to keep. However, I doubt we'll be getting them again in future. But then in terms of something that's just an absolute treat to keep in aquariums, we have some absolutely beautiful rainbow gobies in stock. Now, I love rainbow gobies. They are a small species of fish that have these absolutely beautiful colorations on them. As with a lot of gobies, they need fast flow with good filtration and lots of smooth surfaces for themselves to live upon. These guys are tank bred, which means they are slightly more adaptable than their wild counterparts. But if you're thinking of setting up an aquarium for them, I cannot recommend the article that Practical Fish Keeping put out a few months ago more. They give it an in-depth breakdown on how to keep various different goby species. But just very briefly, you want to have a shallow, long aquarium. Rainbow gobies, online you'll find people saying they can be kept in a 10-gallon. However, I would recommend anything to 20 to 30 gallons, particularly when you are keeping males, because they can be somewhat territorial. A shallow, wide aquarium is ideal for this species with lots of smooth surfaces so that you can create ideal flow for them to swim into. This mimics their natural environment of river biomes, and when you do this, you can very successfully breed this species in captivity. In terms of lifespan, you'll find a lot of people saying 3 to 5 years online. However, there is a lot of accounts of people keeping them for much longer. And when you do keep them for a long period, they show off these absolutely stunning colorations. Although even in their juvenile state, they are one of those fish that are absolutely beautiful to look at. Make sure that you are supplementing feeding with a good sinking pellet, and they are a very peaceful community species fish. So you can keep them with lots of different species, even things like Danios and Tetras, anything that will tolerate a faster flow. Just make sure that you're keeping on top of your water parameters. And just as a small bonus, we had someone bring back one of their black neon gobies, which is very similar in their tank requirements, and this guy is absolutely stunning. And I doubt he will be here by the end of the weekend because he's an absolutely gorgeous specimen, almost at full length, and you can absolutely see why people are so fascinated with keeping gobies in aquarium. Down the end of the aquarium, we have our dedicated barb tanks, where our cherry barbs are looking absolutely stunning. In terms of new barb species, we have some Rhombo barb in stock. They have very similar requirements to things like tiger and green tiger barbs, and they do just look absolutely beautiful. They are almost like a larger variant of Pentazoa barbs, but they can be extraordinarily nippy. So you may find yourself with specimens with slightly nipped tails, particularly as they compete with each other for food. So make sure that you are keeping your aquariums nice and well fed, lots of places to break up sightlines. As is the case with a lot of barb species, I think a planted barb tank is always going to be the way to go, with decent filtration to make sure that these guys are given the requirements they need to survive and thrive. And then in this side of Asia, aside from our busted tank light, I've already talked you through our female bettas, but I just want to highlight one particular betta in general, and that is our Hellboy betta fish, and he is looking absolutely beautiful. All of these tanks up here are still cycling through. They're not quite ready for any new species yet. However, we will be discussing what we're going to be keeping in those tanks in more depth in the second of our series in our Updating Asia range. So if you are interested in that, hit subscribe and follow along for how we slowly develop this side of the room. I'm extraordinarily happy with how everything is going over in Asia at the moment, and I feel like the aquarium is really coming together as a whole. In Australia, we were meant to get some more fork-tail rainbow fish in. Unfortunately, they didn't come in. However, we still have very good stock of our Gertrudis and our Luminatas. Our red rainbow fish are really showing off those beautiful, stunning reds, and the Bosmanis are starting to colour up, showing some of those yellows as they hit their adolescence. And then our neon blue dwarf rainbow fish are looking absolutely beautiful next to our peacock gudgeon. And then in the tanks below them, a little bit of a spillover from Asia. I set up a bit more space for our clam species that were brought in on the last order, so that they aren't all shoved into a single aquarium and they're not going to be getting enough food. And then in terms of our aquascaping range, the aquascapes are looking nice. I think that I might shut down a couple of these and redo them. They've developed quite nicely and they look quite naturalistic. I did a little bit of work on the tree nanoscape. However, I'm personally not happy with them as a whole, and I would like to, improve upon them and do something a little bit new. So I might be shutting these tanks down in the next couple of weeks, and I'll be showing that off in their own videos. I'm thinking that maybe in a 30 litre, I will set up a Pygmy Sunfish aquascape, or even something like a sparkling Gourami aquascape, but we'll see how we go. And then in terms of Africa, I did slightly modify our armored shrimp and cuckoo catfish tank just so it has a bit more gravel in there. Again, we have a few clams in there. We did just get a lot of clams on the last order, and I wanted again to make sure that they are comfortable enough. They do need space to dig into substrate so that they can effectively filter feed. However, I do think that the Hoptosternums and the cuckoo cats are just doing a lot better with a substrate. In particular, I think that the bamboo shrimp have really enjoyed having a bit more planting in this tank, and it's all just been a bit happier since I set up this pseudo aquascape. It's just more of a little habitat for these fish. I wasn't particularly sure in terms of decor for adding to cuckoo catfish. Again, they're one of those fish that I don't know nearly enough about, and I will definitely be doing more research on them. But they really seem to be enjoying having a little bit of planting in this aquarium. In terms of new things in Africa, we have some absolutely stunning peacock cichlids. In terms of Lake Malawi cichlids, I think these might be some of the nicest peacocks that we've ever had in stock. They have these gorgeous, gorgeous reds on them, and they are just such an exciting fish to look at. They are going for $11.50 each, or £30 for free, which, having seen my friends keep peacock cichlids in the past, that is an absolute steal of a price, particularly for these guys that are showing off so much coloration. If you are in the market for some beautiful peacock cichlids, then these guys are just absolutely stunning. We feed our cichlids on a mixture of frozen, live, and dry foods, so you know that they are being taken care of well before you bring them home. As I've spoken about in the past, Malawi cichlids really aren't quite my thing. However, I definitely will be looking into them more in the future. And then with everything else, we still have our Tanganyikan species of our Lamprologus ocellatus, our ocellatus blues, our daffodils, and all of that good things. And then obviously we have our dwarf African frogs, which unfortunately I think we will be stopping keeping at some point in the near future, mainly to do with pet shop license laws, but it leaves us open for a new species to be kept in Africa. So if you have any suggestions, please drop us a comment below. Personally, I'm thinking about keeping some larger Tanganyikan species down there and setting up a bit of a Tanganyika aquascape. So do let us know if you have any suggestions. And before we wrap up, I do want to highlight in our pseudo plant tank, it has some absolutely blinding plant lighting by Superfish on here. So we have some really nice fast growing stem plants like Polysperma, Balisinaria and Hormort. We also have some Kribensis in here, and these guys have just really, really coloured up since the plant order came in. And I watched two Kribensis breeding pairs sparring off against each other for territory. This is a huge tank, more than enough to be keeping Kribensis inside of, and I'm hoping that we'll start to see some babies very soon. However, if you are in the market for a breeding pair of Kribensis, then feel free to come on down. They are looking absolutely beautiful. I've got some absolutely stunning footage of these guys, and I'll be sad to see them go because they've really grown on me. They weren't my thing at all, and I've actually been debating doing a species spotlight on cribs. As far as African cichlids go, I think I'm starting to get to the point where Kribensis might be my favourite, but do not hold me to that at all. And then finishing up the tour, we have some absolutely beautiful plants in this week from Aquaflora, and there's not a great deal to say. We got a good selection of different Cryptocorin in stock. We got some Alternanthera cardinalis, and one of my favorite species of plant is the Echinodoros purpura. I think that's how you pronounce it, which is one of the smallest species of Echinodoros. However, I realize that people don't like me gushing about plants all that much. I might start doing just dedicated plant videos for myself because I enjoy talking about them. And I enjoy talking about where they are from in the wild. So if you would like me to start doing that kind of thing, or even species spotlights on entire varieties of plant, then do just let me know, because I would absolutely love to gush about plants for hours and hours. However, for now, that is everything in terms of new things in our fish house. But if you have made it this far, I would just like to remind you again to not only subscribe to the channel if you have made it this far. A lot of you who watch these videos regularly are not subscribed, and I would love it if you would. But more importantly is please vote in the readers poll for practical fish keeping for Pond Life Aquatics when it comes to voting for us. It would absolutely mean the world and would really encourage us to keep on improving. We'll keep doing that anyway, but it would be very validating if we managed to make it onto the readers poll this year for practical fish keeping. And yeah, thank you everyone who's been supporting the channel recently and the store. I love making these videos. Although viewership has dropped somewhat, I do just really love making them, which is why I'm going to keep making them for the foreseeable future. And next week, we've got something a little bit special, and I've got all the footage, obviously, and it's ready to go. I just need to do some editing on it, and I want to make sure it's good. It will be the first tutorial of a pond build that we've ever done, and it is our bread and butter, and I hope it will illustrate to people some of the more outdoorsy things we do here at Pond Life Aquatics. And I hope you'll enjoy it, because it's something that I don't feel like is touched upon in the aquascaping world of YouTube all that much. It will be a good example of some cool tips and tricks that I haven't ever met anyone else who's done them. I taught them to myself and they work out quite nicely. For now, that's all from me here at Pond Life Aquatics and Tropical Fish London. And I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond Life.